I have a forehead today because it is absolutely boiling hot and I just can't deal with a fringe. So if I turn into a tomato halfway through this video, I apologise, but pasty British skin and this heat do not go well together. Have you ever been hooked by the first line of a book, where you've opened it to page one and that first sentence just made you want to keep reading on and on right up until the end? Because I have. The thing about first lines is that not every book that you're going to love will have that absolutely amazing first line. For example, one of my favourite books in the world, A Little Life, the first line, "The 11th apartment had only one closet," isn't exactly riveting or anything particularly special. And conversely, having an amazing first line does not necessarily mean that you're going to love that book. But over the past couple of months I've been writing lists of some of my favourite first lines, and now that I've reached 25 first lines that I've really enjoyed, I figured why not make a video about it. Of course in the future I may stumble upon some new books with amazing first lines, and if people really enjoy this video maybe I'll make another one. I'm not going to go too in depth into the plots of these books. Do you mind? I swear, as soon as I turned this camera on, the entirety of my road decided that they needed to go on a drive. Silence, there we go. I'm not going to go too in depth into the plots of these books, but if any of them look like something you would be interested in, then definitely give them a shot. As they are still in my book collection, it means that I at least enjoyed them enough to keep them, because I'm very stringent about if I haven't enjoyed a book, it leaves my house. So without further ado, and in no particular order because I'm lazy and couldn't bother to rank them, here are 25 of my favourite first lines in books. Cinderella has been dead for 200 years. Straight off the bat, it's like this iconic character, this massive statement. I mean, yes, the title of the book is also Cinderella is Dead, so you go into it knowing Cinderella is dead. But straight away it was like, wow, punchy first line. Really looking forward to finding out maybe why she's dead. I have always been fascinated by spiders. I'm not entirely sure why this first line resonated with me so much. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing because this is one of my favourite series. But the executioner swung his axe and another head went rolling to the floor. This one is just very evocative as a first line. It gives you a good visual and you're like, okay, I can tell what kind of book I'm getting into. Also, from the same author as Cirque du Freak, there is another one of his books in this because Darren Shan just does first lines very well. All children except one grow up. It's another, I think, from these first couple of first lines, what makes a great first line to me is it's dangling a mystery in front of you. So as soon as you read that you want to know, okay, why doesn't this child that you've told me about grow up? That's a bit weird. And then you're just sucked into the world straight away. Now for a first line that is almost the opposite of that, it doesn't give you any kind of a mystery at all. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I feel like this is almost the epitome of iconic first lines. I feel like people who haven't even read Pride and Prejudice know of that first line. And it's quite long-winded, but still has a bit of a punch to it, I think. You read it and you just go, really? Okay. A truth universally acknowledged that I'd never heard of before. Cool. It was a pleasure to burn. This is one of those first lines that you read and you just go, wow, okay, that's just evoked an emotion in me that I didn't expect maybe from the absolute get-go. It's almost poetic in a way, just that line. It's got a lovely flow to it. It's not a line that gives much away, but it's another one of those mystery and interesting lines where you're just going, who says that? What kind of a character opens their monologue with that? Deathcast is calling with the warning of a lifetime. I'm going to die today. That's one of those first lines that, in a way, spoils the entire book, but then again, the title of They Both Die at the End also tells you how it ends. But it's enough that you're like, okay, give me more of an explanation for why you've just said what you've said. Why are you going to die at the end? Is there more information? Tell me, please. If you hear a scuttling, Pippin, my cat, is chasing flies around the house. So if you suddenly hear a of little feet, that's because he's currently on the hunt. So here's the fowl that almost killed me, director. Another one of those, okay, I need to know more about this. Is the rest of this book this fowl that almost killed you? Why did it almost kill you? Tell me, I need to know. What is so important about this fowl that it almost got you killed? First thing you find out when your dog learns to speak is that dogs don't got nothing much to say. This first line just made me giggle, which, considering the quite dark subject matter of this series of books, is quite a nice way to start. You don't know going in from that first sentence what is going to happen and some of the emotions that you are going to be faced with, but it is a good indication of sort of the dark humour that is in this book as well. If you're reading this, it must be 1,000 years from now. Once again, it's another mystery. What's happened that means that I'm not going to be reading this book for 1,000 years from it being written? Flotillas of the dead sailed around the world on underwater rivers. Once again, slight departure from the consistency of just giving me a good mystery that I need to sink my teeth into. I think this is one of my favourite first lines because it's just beautifully written and makes me want to read more of this, just the language that Terry Pratchett is so good at invoking. Especially when you think that you're going into a book about a postmaster and the postal system, and that is the opening line. I'm pretty much fucked. A hilarious way to open a book, in my opinion. Drops you straight in on the action and gives you a good sense of just the tone that this book has all the way through. It's like end of the world, catastrophe, this guy is going to die, and yet he's doing it in a really funny way. A girl is running for her life. I like what little information you're given here. There's no name, there's just a basic description. A girl, she's running for her life. I need to know more. And you know how I said at the beginning of this where some of my favourite books don't necessarily have the best first lines? Well, my favourite book of all time has one of my favourite first lines, and that is, "There is a pirate in the basement." And I can't tell you why that is such a good first line, apart from, why is there a pirate in the basement? That seems like a weird place for a pirate to be. According to the laws of physics and USA Boxing, this wasn't a fair fight. This is, I believe, the only non-fiction on this list, and yet that's still a nicely lyrical but informative first sentence. I'm laughing because this is it's not my least favourite first line on this list. I still really enjoy it, but it's the hardest one to describe why I enjoy it, other than let me just say the first line and try and explain why I've liked it so much. Sup guys, this is a book I wrote and I hope you enjoy it. A bit in the similar vein of The Martian, it just sets the tone for how this book is going to go. This is a book of mythology. It's a retelling of world mythology, and it is all told in that kind of tone. Completely irreverent, completely fourth wall breaky. He knows he's talking to you through a book, and he's telling you these stories that are ancient, and he's making them relevant and very easy to digest. Small Sam was playing in the car park behind the Waitrose when the grown-ups took him. I think I like this first line so much because there's nothing in that sentence that should be troubling. There's nothing that should invoke a sense of dread, and yet it does. Which, considering that this is a young adult horror movie, young adult horror book, it's doing its job. So, yeah, you read it and you think, okay, should I be worried that grown-ups have picked up a child? I mean, obviously there is one connotation of they've taken him, oh dear, abducted child. But the fact that the language is just grown-ups, not the name of a person or anything like that, it's the grown-ups took him. And as you go further into this book, you realise why they've been described in that sense. This is a story of long ago. Perfect fairy tale opening. It's almost the iconic Once Upon a Time. This is a story of long ago. Tells you what you're in for. You're in for a fairy tale, and that's exactly what you're given. The stranger came out of the sea like a water ghost, barefoot and wearing the scars of his journey. This is probably a mixture of all the things I've said earlier that I like. It's lyrical, it's giving you a sense that the language in this book is going to be really nice and like well written, and yet you're once again left wanting more. Who is the stranger? What happened on his journey that's left him with scars? Why has he just walked out of the water? Why has he walked out of the ocean? It would be inaccurate to say that my childhood was normal before they came. When I'm going into a mystery/thriller, that's what I want to read. You've given me very little information, but you've given me the hint that there is something deeper going on. You've told me that strange things happened, but that strange things already happened to you as a child, but I don't know who you are. I don't know who they are, and I don't know what has happened, but I need to know. Right, 5 more left, guys. If you stuck with me this far, then thank you. I have no idea if this is interesting to anyone but me, but we're gonna keep going. It wasn't as though the farm hadn't seen death before, and the blowflies didn't discriminate. Another, if I'm going into a thriller, yes, give me a dead body in the first sentence. Great. And you've also evoked a visceral image of flies eating at dead bodies in the heat. And I know that I'm going to get vivid imagery all the way through this book if that is how it opened. Shouldn't be surprising that the author who wrote my favourite book features on this twice, because she has only written 2 books, and I imagine if she ever writes a 3rd book, that would probably also have one of my favourite first lines in it. The circus arrives without warning. When I read that first line, I had to check myself and be like, wait, have I just opened a thriller? Because I thought I was reading a fantasy book. And that's given me a weirdly sinister vibe. Which isn't necessarily indicative of the rest of this book. The rest of this book is very magical. But I opened it and read that first line and was like, oh, she's done it again. I know that I'm going to love this just straight from the off. We called him Old Yeller. Simple. It's so simple as a sentence. We called him Old Yeller. And I know you've just told me the title of the book again. But who is Old Yeller and why did you call him that? And tell me the story, please. Now, considering I'm not going to say love-hate at this point because any love I had for her has transferred just to her work. I love the work that exists because of this person. I don't love her. I very much despise her. I can't say the word hate because I don't physically know her in real life, but yes, I'm having this book on this list in no way means that I support this author. However, this first sentence, I think, played a pivotal role in a lot of people's young lives, especially in Britain, especially as I was growing up and these books were coming out. And I think it would be dishonest for me to not put it on this list when it is a sentence that even after 15 plus years of reading it for the first time, I can still remember word for word. And that is, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. See, I have such bittersweet feelings about this series now, because it did so much in sort of forming who I am as a person, and it came out at a pivotal time in my life. I mean, the last movie came out when I was 16, so sort of almost just as I was leaving formal schooling, leaving like that part of childhood behind and becoming a young adult properly. That I can't just act like there wasn't a time in my life that I loved this author and everything that she was putting out, that I idolised her, which I think is why it hurts so much to find out how horrible of a person she is. And then it makes you, or at least it makes me, like, want to check myself when I get these warm feelings about this series, because I'm like, she's ruined it. And then part of me wants to tuck this series away and be like, no, she has no bearing on this anymore. She put this into the world, yes, but the people who love it belongs to them now. And so, yeah, I have very conflicting, and I'm getting quite emotional, conflicting feelings about this series. You know, I said I wouldn't go into much depth about these, and then I just spent, what feels like 10 minutes talking about one book and my complicated feelings about the author, which was not what this video was about at all. I don't know if I will even keep that in. But you know what, let's go for the last book. The last book in the series, and we're coming back to an author who is already featured on here twice, and that is, when Martin Crepsley awoke and yawned on a grey Tuesday morning, he had no idea that by midday he would have become a killer. It's a weird way to cheer myself up by using this book after what I just talked about. But this is just another example of how Darren Shan opens his books with a punch. It started off with, I've always been fascinated by spiders. Quite innocuous, but not innocuous. Quite innocuous, but evocative enough that I want to read on and find out more about this character that is fascinated by spiders. And then you get to a quite visceral description of a head being lopped off, and now you have this, and it opens up and tells you the main character of this book is a killer. I mean, it's also titled Birth of the Killer, so you kind of know that going in. And yet I'm like, wow, what could happen in one day that this person who woke up in the morning thinking it'd just be a normal day finishes the day having murdered someone, or multiple someones. You have no idea at this point, you just know that by the end of this day his hands are no longer clean and he has